Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. We can hear you.
Okay. I think we'll wait for a couple of minutes more. Maybe one of you could send a message in the group.
That, sir, I think our last was got over at 1:45, so people are probably having lunch.
Oh, is it? Somebody has overshot his time, is it?
I'll just send a message. I think even ma'am, Usha ma'am has sent it in the group. I'll send it in our students.
Yeah. Okay. So the importance of time management.
Sir, you can start now.
Yeah, because she said, the last class got over late.
Okay. Fine.
It's more. I know in an online environment, you can have lunch and also be on the line.
Yeah,
In any case, you won't have lunch, I know.
correct.
You will have your lunch only at dinner at 7:30 or 8 in the night.
Correct.
So you live on water.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But it's not good. It's not good for health.
Yeah, not good. Correct.
So you have always been on your toes every day. Right?
Correct.
So, anyway, I think we'll just give another minute and then we'll start.
Sure.
It should also be fair to them,
Correct.
Fair enough. I think we should start. So welcome back. I don't know, this may be the fourth or the third session for you. Must be really taxing you all. And for those of you who are there and scorching hot places, it's even more difficult to absorb in the afternoon. But then we'll have to do the job, right? So morning, I think Mayuri ma'am, she asked a very important question. And she wanted to know whether at the end of this entire course, whether you will get a full view of how the development center is managed. So part of that was answered in the morning session, where we have defined the roles of various people. And an extension to what was discussed in the morning, we'll talk about what are the other areas of managing the development center in this session. So broadly, we will be discussing about how do you organize a DC. And morning, I also spoke about virtual DC. Virtual DC without considerable development of AI, I think is not really meaningful. So at the moment, it is just the concept, but not very operationally effective. Then what are the common challenges that we face if you are an administrator of the development center? And what are the various stages of assessment? I think that will largely address, today's two sessions will largely address what you all have raised in the morning. And let us understand, now you know various activities. I think we have already dealt with them adequately in terms of what are the various activities that are involved in a development center and who are the various players involved in that. What do you think are the, if you were to set up a new development center, what are things that you would look at it? You know, can you look at the broad classification of items, what are required for a development center? It's like any other training center with some additional paraphernalia. Can some of you tell me what are the things that you would like to look at for setting up a development center? That is what is all about organizing a DC. Yeah, any one of you can start.
Sir, I'd like to try.
Yeah.
So I think one is the first and the foremost thing would be the infrastructure. In no.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so infrastructure is one part, which is also crucial part, because since the activities of development center run very fast and there are multiple activities, having everything ready in terms of the place and the activity handout. I mean, whatever that is required, participant list, ensuring participants are sent reminders through where the organizer is or through the organization, be there on time because you need to start the activities on time. Then the people who are going to be assessing the development center, I think they need to be well trained and be there beforehand. And they probably would have to do a rehearsal. I mean, if they are not very well versed on doing it continuously as a part of their activity, they might have to rehearse some things in terms of the flow of the day and what are the various parameters on which they're going to be gauging the participants. So these would be before the DC starts. And I think then there'll be some activities which are there during the assessment center, I mean development center, which they will have to ensure it's like it runs like a well-oiled machine. And I think at the end of the assessment center, also ensuring that the feedback is collected and then it is circulated and it's shared, so that the effectiveness of the development center remains. Because if the feedback comes, let's say a week after the development center, participants might end up forgetting the objective of them being there and might not get the output. I think this is what would be some of the things that are.
Very good, very good. Anybody wants to add to what Madam has said?
So I think everything is included. Maybe recruitment, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. You need the people, particularly the SSS. Yeah. Very good.
Location of the center.
So where should it be?
Yeah.
Where do you think they will the location be?
Yes, sir.
Do you want it to be in the organization, outside the organization? What do you suggest?
It's for me, I think it's inside the organization.
Okay. Typically, what are the problems if it is inside the organization?
So there may be a lot of distractions.
Like,
For example, even if now factory, if you're conducting the training inside the factory also, so they may get the calls, and sometimes they in the emergency, they need to come out of the trainings, and lot of distractions. They need to attend the phone and everything. If it is outside training, at that time they'll totally switch off the phone, no more distractions. Whatever emergency the other people can do, but if it is inside the organization, even if it is a small matters also, they need to come out and face the situations. Maybe that kind of distractions may happen. It is
yeah,
inside the.
true. So since it's a very serious affair, DC is a very serious affair, and also it costs a lot of money.
Yes, sir.
It's preferable not to have it inside,
Oh, okay, sir.
where you can be called by your bosses, or people can go out and start doing their work. They're half here and half there.
Yes,
That
sir.
disturbance is not desirable. So typically, we should have a center which is out of all these distractions. Your boss should not call you. You should not feel that I'm under pressure to deliver a certain result. Therefore, I want to just rush through my process and go back and do some work there. Those kinds of things should not be there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Also, I
That's
think
all.
so. Sorry, Padma, go ahead.
No, nothing. That's all I can think of. You can proceed. Thank you.
So I was just thinking, so that if you want the participants to give their 100% and be there, I think they can be more relaxed in an external environment. In an
Absolutely.
internal environment, they might feel like guinea pigs because people might pass on outside the room and wonder what's going on and try and connect, and they might not be able to give their full attention.
Correct.
If the idea is to develop them, if the idea is to figure out what are the areas of improvement, or how they are, what they are, then I think it's important that they should be relaxed and they should be out of the typical routine environment. Many times today we know that after the training is over, people have to go back and finish the day's work, or maybe they know that their bosses will call back and find out what happened. And okay, if it's not helping well, don't go tomorrow. So these are the kind of comments partisans expect. So I think what you said is very right. If it is outside in a very neutral premise, that probably will help the getting the right impact.
Correct. Absolutely. So let's look at what are the various dimensions of organizing the DC and how the whole thing goes. So first and foremost is selection of participants. How do you select people for the development center? Now, since it's a development center, not a selection center or an assessment center for the talent acquisition, here typically your pool of candidates will be your own organization. You are looking at how the people can be picked up and they can be selected for their development process, and hence your entire population is your own organization's employees. And when it is internal employees, there are a lot of politics that can get into it. Somebody can be sent there because you want to do a favor by sending him there. Somebody can be sent there because you want to punish. Because once your boss gets the report can be used for multiple purposes. One of them is because there are some weaknesses in development areas. You can be victimized, you can be targeted, you can be given some raw deal. And therefore, it can also be leading to some kind of unfairness. So you have to have the organization per se should have a very, very clear, fair, and objective way of selecting the participants. And the process of selection should be very clearly communicated to everyone so that there is no, dissatisfaction among the people who are wanting to be a part of this development center process. So there are different ways by which you can select the participants. One is you can ask the participants, subject to certain criteria, they can do their own self-nomination. You can ask them to voluntarily participate. Voluntary participation or offering their own participation will probably be better in terms of their involvement, the seriousness, and the outcomes of the program instead of somebody being nominated. But here you must have very, very clear criteria, and the person who is finally selecting the candidates must thoroughly scrutinize, and those who are satisfying the criteria only should be selected. Number two is you can have a selection criteria and tell the line manager, whoever it is, to nominate certain number of people from each department. So the manager takes the ownership in terms of who is eligible and who is not eligible. And that has to be scrutinized further by the development center, because you need to have some kind of a homogeneity in terms of the profiles, background, the purpose for which they're all coming for this and all. So that is second way of doing it. The third one is you can make some people to apply or look at the performance appraisal of the employees in the organization, pick up some high performing individuals. The reason why we want to take high performance individuals is because you are investing in them, in putting them through the development center, which is pretty expensive. And therefore, if they are not high performance individuals, you may not really reap the benefit of return on the investment that you are making on them. So the committee selects a certain number of people based on the criteria, and then they will send the list to the development center. The next one, of course, is you conduct some psychometric tests, assess them, and then see who is above the threshold level, below the threshold level, in between, and devise some criteria who should be picked up for the development center. And the last, of course, is you can also have either a departmental head or a committee call the candidates. You can ask the individuals to apply, and then they can be called for an interview. During the interview, you find out what are the aspirations and what is the purpose, why they want to come to development center, and where you could get some authentic responses in terms of their commitment and seriousness for the development center process. You can pick and choose the people. So there are multiple ways by which you can select the participants for the training, the development center. And whichever the method you do, or whichever the combination of method, it's not necessary that should use only one method and be done with that. You can also use a combination of these methods, but that should all communicate to the stakeholders that the organization is fair, and they have already been, they have communicated the message to everyone who is eligible to participate in that. And they are very clear about why certain people are being sent for this process, because the organization wants to develop them, which eventually will help the organization to develop itself. The second one, of course, you also talked about the venue, which is very, very important. Now, the participant must be able to focus and concentrate on the processes. That is why he should be away from many distractions in the development center. Preferably, it should be away from the routine workplace. Therefore, it can be an organization's own premises elsewhere. And if it is not in a commercial location, you will have some better peace of mind. You can conduct the process much better, because at a given point in time, the number of people who will be attending the development center are not large numbers. So even in a residential location, this should be fine. But nobody should be allowed. Nobody should have any exigencies of attending the work once you are in the development center process. You require different sizes of rooms, which are dependent on the context in which the DC is being set up for an organization. You will require some rooms where you have a plenary session of all the people. You require some smaller rooms where you can conduct some group discussions or some activities such as role plays and all that. And you must also have some open space where they can do certain activities which are in the open. So all these facilities have to be there, and particularly the room should also have they should be noise free. They must have reasonable amount of comfort in terms of light, heat, circulation of ventilation. All that should be there, so that they are able to focus and remain focused on the development center activities throughout their stay in the premises. The next one, of course, is schedule. Now, as you know, we have discussed that it is by multiple assessors with multiple tools and techniques and multiple competencies, right? Since you are doing so much in a very tightly packed manner, the time management is very important. And therefore, your preparation of schedule is itself an art, So to ensure that everything that we have planned happens as per our own plan. So what is the difficulty in this? The difficulty here is there are multiple assessors who are actually observing the participants, and they have to do a lot of documentation, recording. Now, it is not that you can rush through everything and produce some report which is substandard. The people who are asking the employees to go through the development center are doing it for a purpose. And when they go back and they receive, when you send the report to them, they should feel the development purpose report has actually served the purpose, that has met the objective for which the participants have been sent. And therefore, you must provide sufficient time for observation, recording, and making inferences for each of these exercises. If you don't do it, and if there's pressure on the assessors, they probably can go wrong in what they are intending to do, and that will not serve the purpose for the organization. Now, each participant will not perform or do the activity in the same way. Some people will do it fast, some people may do it slow, some people the reaction time is longer. Therefore, you should not assume the best case scenario, but you should also consider the people who would like to take more time for participation. And some people, they don't immediately participate. Actually, they take some time before they come out of their shell and start participating and actually integrating in the group. And hence, you must provide sufficient time for them to display their competencies rather than either shying away from them or displaying something which is not natural to them. Then you also must have, because there are multiple people doing this assessment, and all these people have to sit together and discuss and then integrate, you must provide sufficient time for the integration. Now, steps in finalizing the schedule basically is that you must first get them all together. As I think in the morning I have discussed this, you all have to, they all have to get together into one room where a certain amount of briefing is to be done. So they at that stage, you are actually putting them all on the same page. You are getting the buy-in from them for the development center process. You're going to tell them what will be done, why will it be done, what are the objectives of doing it, what is there in it for them, and ultimately how is it going to benefit for them in their career progression. All these things will be briefed to them, and you will also clarify any doubts that they have, so that once the process starts, they will not have any hesitation to participate and give their authentic participation to the development center. So you also have to tell them what is their role and responsibility in terms of small group activities, how they have to conduct themselves, and then you must, there will be some overall, the plenary sessions, there will be some small group activities, and there will be some individual activities. And for each one of them, you need to provide them sufficient amount of orientation. So that requires sufficient time to be factored into the schedule. Then after that, the briefing is over, they can come together and start working as per the schedule. So the schedule preparation has to be done with a lot of finesse, and people with only experience can only understand where this extra time is required without putting the participants under undue duress. The participants should always feel relaxed, and they should not feel the pressure because of the time constraints, and that's a very, very important dimension. Then how many participants should be there in one batch of development center? It should be anywhere between 10 to 20. You can stretch up to 25. Ideally, it should be around 10 to 20. So if you have about 15 to 20, I think that's a more manageable batch. And if you have got more than 25, it may not give you the kind of results that you are expecting. Therefore, selecting more than 25 is not at all productive. I would go to the extent of saying that possible, restrict it to 20. That's a much better batch to handle. And, you know, you have a lot of documentation work. More the number of people, the documentation goes up. If the documentation goes, the accuracy comes down, it doesn't give you the required output in terms of a report and the action plan for them. And therefore, restrict them to 10 to 20. Maximum, you can go up to 25. Then each development center also needs a standalone independent equipment. Now, in many places, particularly in training centers, quite often what we find is if some participant requires any photocopying or printing, it's generally not easy to get these facilities in that. So your training center, apart from the basic furniture, air conditioning, proper lighting, I think these are all the basics now. They're there everywhere. But a little more sophisticated things are generally not provided by the organizations. And one of them is a good quality printer and a good quality laptop, good quality updated software in the desktops and all that. So, and during the process, we may not allow anybody to access their cell phones. But most of these people, when they are they may, if at all, in case of necessity, they want to keep in touch with anybody outside the timing of outside the schedule of the DC. They must have the availability of the Wi-Fi so that they can get connected. The training, the development center usually does not provide the names in public in the group to the assessors of the participants. The reason is if names are provided and there's because of various reasons, you may have, the assessors may have some biases. And therefore, for each one of the participants, you allot a number, and that participant number is what is used to address him or her. So the development center, except the administrator, some people who are involved in the coordination, except them, others need not and must not know the names of the participants to avoid any undue bias. The next important thing is the entire operation is highly confidential. During the briefing stage, you will also brief the participants how important it is to maintain the confidentiality of whatever the process that is being they're being put through is kept to themselves. They should not go and talk about it elsewhere. And since it requires a lot of documentation, paperwork, printing, xeroxing, and all that, these papers should not fly in and out, because that can then destroy the whole premises that you are maintaining privacy and confidentiality. That should not happen at all. And hence, you please make sure that the photocopiers and the printers are not accessible to everybody, because sometimes we may give a printout and then we forget to collect it, and it is remaining there. It might miss from the printer. If it goes into the wrong hands and it gets circulated in the social media, the purpose is defeated. And in any case, we know that this is a very confidential kind of a process. You should not let anybody else sneak into it and damage the entire activity that is being done. Since it requires tremendous amount of documentation, so the assessor should have adequate amount of stationery, pencils and pens, and also that they can make their observations and use it for integration subsequently. Now, the assessor is the key. He is the focus of this entire activity. The assessor must have complete details about the DC process before he gets engaged in this. There will be multiple people. All of them we spoke in the morning should have a standard operating procedure, a manual, which can be shared with each one of them so that everybody understands, everybody reads the same, and more hopefully they all understand it in the similar way. If they still have any doubts, we can conduct a meeting and clarify them so that everybody uses the same framework for assessing the participants. Then they must know the full details about what competencies are they assessing, what tools are they using, what exercises are they doing, when are they doing, where are they doing, how are they doing, and what are those observations to be made. All that information will be available to them. And like I showed you in the morning, you must have a document which will show you a clear definition of each competency, and then all of them should follow the same definition. Now, this, since multiple people are observing the participants, and multiple people observing means multiple, observations are being noted, and they all have to sit together because they all have to converge. You cannot have 10 different observations from the assessors, and then the ultimately the user of this report should not get confused what this is all about. And hence the integration of all the assessors observations is very, very important, and there must be some way where they can meet, sit together, discuss about each participant, and agree upon what they all converge to. So therefore, the coordinator, the facilitator, and the administrator of the development center have a lot to do in terms of putting all the assessors together and making them to discuss, to come to some kind of unanimous decision, or at least a generally acceptable level of the observations for the participants. Yeah, any questions so far? We discussed about what you need to organize the development center. You still have any other questions or anything that you want to add? Please share.
Just one question, more of just wanting to understand. So when we talked about selection of participants, the first option that we discussed was about self-nomination. Now, given the fact that development centers are very expensive, and most of the organizations would want to really scrutinize the participants before they are put onto a development center, because it's actually an investment by the organization, and business leaders are typically against it because of the amount of money that is being spent and also the time that might consume. How would self-nomination actually work? Because when such kind of an announcement comes in that we are doing a development center, because of lack of understanding, lot of people or maybe a lot of employees want to apply. Of course, you mentioned that there are criteria and there are parameters which they have to fulfill before they can self-nominate. But would that not again lead into an angst, saying that you have made the criteria so difficult that normal employees, average employees, cannot really apply for that? So how will self-nomination really work if somebody wants to implement that kind of a selection process?
Okay, good question. It's not that, if you are, if the process of selection is by self-nomination, does not mean that you nominate yourself, you're automatically in. Ultimately, there's a capacity restriction in terms of 10 to 20, right? If the number of people who are nominating themselves are more, then you use another criteria also. We have talked about multiple ways of selection. So it is not that only one method of selection is to be done. Then you can refer them all to another committee. You set up a committee and say that, okay, I have a capacity requirement of 15, but I've got 30 candidates. Can the committee scrutinize these things? And then you come up with the shortlisted candidates. Then you can go to third level, and maybe you may shortlist based on some criteria. You may shortlist about 20, and you still have to eliminate 5 more. Then you can go for interviews and speak to the concerned candidates and ask them why they want to go for the development center, what is their purpose, are they serious about it, are they focused about it, and will they be able to give the time given the job and the engagement in the development center, will it be feasible at all? You see, quite often the feasibility is a big issue. I want to do some development center activity, but my job is so tight, I may not be able to go. So you can use multiple methods to eliminate people who are not immediately requiring this, and then select the right candidates for making this activity very effective.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Then we talked about the virtual DC. See, the most important thing in any of these, either assessment center or the development center is, as we have been repeatedly saying, that it is something to do with the behavior, and behavior can only be observed. It cannot be captured in many other ways. And therefore, these assessor, in the morning we said, they must be very alert. They must have they must be highly sensitive to making the observations, not only making the observations, immediately converting that observation into written piece of paper or a word, and they must be very familiar with the kinds of words they must use for various kinds of behavior observations. Now, this observation is a big restriction in the virtual mode. In virtual mode, it is not as easy as it is in physical mode to make keen observations, and then you receive the cue, process it, interpret it, and then write down a certain word for that. It's not easy in the virtual environment, and hence, at the moment, development center as a virtual, in a virtual format is very restrictive, although it can happen as we move forward. If your camera is integrated into a software which is having an AI requirement, which will AI application which will look at your facial features and your body movements and interpret that the way a physical interaction between two people is done, then perhaps a virtual development center can really be beneficial in that sense. Otherwise, it has got limited applicability. Now, what are the challenges? Suppose you are the heading this development center, and you will have to conduct multiple processes in a year, and there is a mandate from the organization that you must develop the employees. So, what are the challenges that you're likely to face in this entire thing? Can you think of some challenges? What a development center head can face, and what predicaments that he or she may have? Yeah. Put yourself in the development center head position, and if you have to conduct this development center for certain level of employees, what are the possible challenges that you might face? How to overcome that is the next step. But I think first of all, let us understand what challenges do you face, or do you foresee? Yes, Mahirima.
So, sir, a couple of challenges I can think of. One is from the participant side, they being completely open and honest and participating in that. So that is one. Second could be that because it is maybe for a day or 2 or 3 days, whatever, businesses need to accept the fact that people will be out, and they need to let go them without kind of putting pressure. So I think that is from business side. I think post development center, the outcome should yield into or it should be successful from an organization's perspective. I think that's the biggest challenge, because if the development center is run as per the information that is, it's an external consultant who is doing it, I think they have to be given all the information transparently, other than the names, as we mentioned, so that they're able to do justice to the entire process. If things are not clear to them, or or the objective is not established in the beginning, or they are not being given the right amount of information guidelines, probably the development center will not be as effective as it is envisaged. So I think the sharing of information is important. Participants' contribution and their 100% attention is important. Businesses to be able to buy in, have a buy-in, and then able to motivate people to join and give themselves to that. So the line manager also will play a very crucial role in terms of ensuring that his participant is fully there, so that he's able to contribute. And for that process to continue in the organization time and again, I think the impact or the ROI of the development center should be something that the business should be comfortable with. or at least if there's no ROI, but at least the ROE, which is the return on expectations of the business, should be there. So that is very important. And of course, a very, very impartial and a very, very non-biased feedback from the assessors will make it effective. These are some of the challenges that I could think of.
Very good, very good. I think you've covered them very well, and you have touched upon various dimensions. They're all very valid. Yeah, anybody else wants to add to what Mayuri ma'am has said? What challenges do you foresee in a development center? Okay, since you are not coming forth, then we'll complete the way that we want to articulate these things. I think the biggest challenge is setting up the right kind of participants. This is true not only for development center, for any training program. The group of people that come together to either development center or to any training center is very, very important to decide or to make sure whether the training program at a development center is effective or not. There must be some kind of homogeneity among the participants. If it is too heterogeneous, then it is difficult for some people to interact with the others, in terms of levels, in terms of seniority, in terms of age. There are several factors that you may take into consideration, and they all should feel that I am comfortable with my co-participants. They all should have some kind of similar types of work profile, and they must not feel that I am an odd man out in this in this group, in this organization. What happens if you have got two different levels? First of all, the wavelengths of thinking are different. And then one level person is obviously above the other level person. And those who are considered to be in the lower level may not feel comfortable to express themselves. And therefore, the purpose of development center itself can be defeated. Then, as you all asked about, what happens if the number of participants who are interested in development center are more than 25, which is itself an outer limit, and the organization may not like to spend more amount of money in conducting multiple programs, and let's say there are some 35 or 40 of them, and you are asked to conduct a single program, that's a big challenge, because there is limitation on the assessors in terms of making the observations, documenting them, clustering them, then integrating them. All these things are not as easy as one thinks, and hence one has to be extremely cautious about it. The next one is about the assessors. How would you select the assessors? What should be the right ratio between assessors to the participants? Now, assessors are supposed to be very, very competent in the area of the assessment for which they are being selected. They can be from inside the organization, they can be from outside the organization. If they are from inside the organization, there are some issues which can crop up in the development center. Because you're an insider, you may have some preconceived notion about some of the participants, and that might end up as a bias. And similarly, the responses from the participants also can be very restrictive, because you are an internal person. If you are senior to them and you are somewhere connected to their job profile, they might have a problem in being natural self. You may not be able to express yourself, right? So you have to be you should do due diligence in terms of selecting the right kind of assessors based on the purpose and the objectives for which you are conducting the development center. If you bring from outside, it is less bias, hopefully, but it might involve some time inconvenience, certain amount of cost, all those things. What is the preferred ratio between assessors to the participants? Ideally, one assessor should observe two participants. One assessor should observe two participants, but then that if the budget is a tight budget for the organization, then you can go up to three participants to one assessor is okay. But beyond that, it becomes difficult. Now, having said that, the assessors have, we said, suppose there are 15 people in the development center, then at the rate of 2 per assessor, you require 7 assessors. One assessor may be given maybe 3, and others may be given 2 each in terms of their observations. Now, even mapping the assessor to the participants is also to be very keenly looked at. They should not be, it should avoid any possible biases that may come and hinder our process of development center. Sometimes line managers who are supposed to be experts, because the development center, the assessor has to be sort of a subject matter expert. He should know what are the competencies required for the job position and whether these competencies are available in the person in front of him, whom he is observing, and how does he make the report. So the line manager appears to be a decent choice or a good choice in terms of the competent assessment. But if you've got internal line managers, assessors, then they might have some biases coming in the way, and the employees of the organization who are participating in the development center may not also feel free to participate. And if they give any kind of biased report, it will put off some number of trainees or the participants, which is not going to help in the entire success of the project. Then you need to have some kind of a standardization of rating and then feedback. The most important thing in the development center is you have assessed everything scientifically. You have used technology for assessing the people. And after that, you are putting them into some kind of an interpretation, and you are telling them this is the prescription for you, or this is the development plan for you. So this requires some kind of a standardization, particularly if the assessors are a diverse group, or if some of them are newly inducted into the assessment in a development center. So you need to be very cautious about that, and due to which it's important to have a rating, some kind of a normalization to be done if required, and the rating has to be finalized in advance so that all the assessors, whatever the assessment they're doing, can be comparable, and then you will take an integrated view of the assessments done by different assessors. Then scheduling we have already discussed. Some of the problems that are likely to happen is one, of course, these days the cell phone or the social media interference should not be there while somebody is going through the development process in the development center. Number one. Number two, the bosses of the employees, if they call back any employee, you must put your foot down and oppose that. Because once the development process starts, you should not leave immediately. Sometimes some organizations advocate that why don't you do it over the weekend when others are not there in the office, and it can extend to a longer period of time. Instead of doing a 6-day program in continuation, you do a 2-day program every week and finish it in 3 weeks. But then these all look very nice when you speak about, but when it comes to practice, I've been seeing this for several years. It's not easy. the people in the cooperation is not as simple as we expect it to be. And therefore, you must have some kind of a standardization. And after that, the assessor should discuss and arrive at a consensus based observations. And then a report can be generated to provide feedback to the concerned participant. Now, when the report is provided and there are multiple people and multiple departments involved in this, the assessor, the participant is going to confront you with the question of how fair it is, and therefore you must be ready to have a proper justification. And don't allow the participants to leave the program in between. Put your foot down and say, I will not let you go. And then you must make sure that as far as possible, all of them do the process at the same time, so that there's no time lag. You know, if you conduct it for different people at different times and try to integrate that as a scientific method of research, it may not work. Now, here is some commonly used format for development center scheduling. Have a quick look at it. If you have any questions, we will address that. Otherwise, we'll move on and go to the next topic. Yeah. Any questions? As you can see here, the participant name is not mentioned. They have just simply been given a coded name P1, P2, P3, P4, P5. So you don't give the name out in the schedule. Then whatever we discussed, that is all coming up in the planning or the scheduling of the development center. And your objective is to motivate and make sure as many as possible are taking part in the development center. Yeah, any questions? Okay. Now, morning we have understood the rules. Then we have understood what kind of to organize a DC, what kind of requirements are there, right from infrastructure to assessors to the equipment, technology, whatever is required and all that. Then we have covered what are the challenges that one may face in arranging the development center. Now let us look at what are the various stages of assessment, because the assessment does not happen just in one go. There are different stages. If you want the assessment to be successful, you have to follow a certain logic and a pattern, and that will lead you to have a better process understanding, which will lead you to successful implementation of development center. So first, as we discussed in the little while ago, you must get a list of participants. The selection process is all over by now. All of them should come together, and maintaining the time is very, very, very important. You must make sure that all the participants do not take the development center for granted. They must all stick to the timelines that are mentioned in the schedule, and the program starts exactly as planned. So get them all in, give them a briefing of what all we discussed, why they are there, what is the purpose of it, how the process is, what are the testings that they will undergo. And by going through all this and getting a report towards the end, how it is going to benefit them in their career. Now, this is quite an exciting thing for the employees, because you are talking to them as a well-wisher for them, and that will benefit them in their career. That is the first step. That is the first level of buy-in. The details that you are sharing should be very, very transparent, and you should be forthright, because you are making assessment which will have an impact on their future prospects. Either they're going to have some accelerated promotion policy or regular promotion policy. no promotion at all, demotion, and not working in the oil. These are several options that they have. When you have these kinds of options, it is important for them to understand what these are, and a transparent way of sharing is very essential. You must give them the schedule of the DC and tell them that is strictly implemented. There is some sanctity to the time management, and make sure it is followed. And what are the do's and don'ts that they should follow? And when they are in the development center, you must tell them usage of cell phones, unnecessary gossip, then leaving the development center in between for various other reasons, either personal or professional reasons, and not being authentic in their participation. All those things you can brief them in the briefing session. Then you must bring them the value proposition for being in the development center. Yeah, since the money is spent by the organization, they may not understand the value of that in terms of money. But in terms of the cognitive inputs and behavioral skills that is going to improve on the individuals, you must tell them how it is going to add value to their profile and how that would benefit them in conversion, in converting their job opportunities to a higher level of opportunities. All of them should understand the schema in the same way, and you should also set the expectations from the participants as far as their participation in the activities are concerned. While doing all this, don't build any pressure on the participants. Don't intimidate them. Don't make them get frightened with the processes. I think you must put them all in such a way that they are still relaxed and they do not have any anxiety. And in a country like ours, if you're going to be assessed for all these parameters, the first fear is loss of your job. So that kind of a thing, and where the jobs are not, in lakhs and lakhs availability, in terms of availability, everybody wants to be protective about their job, and that should not be threatened. And therefore, you present whatever you want to present in such a way that they still feel relaxed and there is no anxiety built up on their mind. And make sure we want them all to be natural self. Natural self you will be only when you assure them that it is highly confidential and it will not be told to anybody who will have some negative impact on the individual concerned. Then we come to the observation. Observation is a very important part of the entire DC process, because you are looking at the behaviors of the people and the required improvement in the behaviors of the people. And hence, the observation is very, very critical in the entire DC operations. Typically, you allocate 2 participants to 1 assessor. 2 participants to 1 assessor. 1:2, 1:3. That assessor will observe the participant on 3 competencies. So if you are altogether, if your job profile requires 6 competencies, then you require 2 assessors. 1 assessor will look at the first 3 competencies. The other assessor will look at the other competencies, other 3 competencies which are required for the job. Now, it is quite possible that in certain cases, it is not only these 2 people, but their behavior in terms of a team or a group activity is also important. The group dynamics also play a role in the individual behavior, and therefore the assessors should also keep an eye on the behavior of these participants when they are doing some kind of a group activity. So you have primary responsibility for 2 participants and on 3 competences. But if they are doing some group related activity, you must also see how the group dynamics affect them, there you have to observe the group also to validate and authenticate your observations on a set of people that you are actually monitoring. The assessor concerned should know the definition of the three competencies that he is observing. He should know the profile of the two participants. He should also know what is the meaning, the precise meaning of these three competencies, so that his observations and the assessment report is in sync with whoever has designed those competencies for that particular organization. And the assessor should not be allowed to change the process, although they are experts in that area. But as a matter of practice in a development center, you should not let them change the process midway. That will have some negative impact on the assessment as such. And each observation that they are writing in the piece of paper or the book that they have been given should be related to the competencies which they are actually assessing them. If it is not related, it doesn't make sense to make any observation on that. When the participants are doing certain activity, the assessors should not come in the way of their activity. They should not interfere in the activity. Not only that, they should not give even any non-verbal cues about the acceptance, rejection, approval of certain actions by the participants. You should not nod your head, you should not smile, you should not, do different gestures, which may be suggestive to the participant that what is being done is either right or wrong. That is not done at all at the development center. Once the activity starts, ideally the assessor should move back and let the participants be their natural self and do whatever is required as a part of that activity, so that you get the true nature of the participant. If you don't do that, if you are still there, the behavior of the people will change. When they know that they're being observed, they're very cautious, and therefore the results may not help you reach where you want to reach. Then comes recording. Recording, we talked about it in the morning. Development center activity requires a lot of notings to be done by the assessors on a piece of paper, which can be preserved for future use in case of any requirements. And that paper will have the notings of what all has been observed by them as a part of the activity by the development center participants. So it is a skill, and that is very critical. Noting down with appropriate words is a skill, and that should be cultivated by all the assessors, and they must be extremely good at that. There are multiple people doing multiple assessments at the same time, and the participant is the same. So when the multiple assessors are recording their observations in different ways, and if there's no one standardized way of doing it, then it is going to be very difficult to bring them together and do some kind of an integration. So what we should do is, it should be before the activity starts, at least the concerned assessors should discuss among themselves how do you capture the observations and how it's going to be integrated later on. Come from the end to the beginning, then you will have lesser problems and lesser heartburn rather than from beginning to the end. Sometimes it helps to start from the end and come to the beginnings. That will give you a very clear path ahead when you want to work on that. So the recording has to be done in a structured manner. It should be done for the competencies for which you are putting the candidate through the development center process. And at some point during the process, when you are exchanging the notes with others, it should have some kind, it should sync in some way the others' way of writing, so that you are all able to put the observations together and come with some clear conclusions and recommendations. Then classifying. Yeah, am I going too fast or what? We are not discussing this afternoon. We are only, it is like monologue. Is it like that?
No, sir.
Is it
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, definitely, sir.
That's okay.
Yes, sir.
What about others?
Yes, sir.
Bobby George, Mr. Jagannath, Mr. Dilip Kumar Rai, are you all
Yes, sir.
me? Good. Because
I have one question, but I can ask at the end of the session also.
What is that?
It's on the assessors. So I wanted to ask you when you were discussing the assessors. So is there any qualification or maybe some certification required for a person to become an assessor? Because I think nowadays there are a lot of certifications that people typically offer. Is it a mandatory requirement to have certification?
For certain psychological tests, 100% mandatory. If it is related to subject matter, it may not be mandatory. If you have got sufficient, proficiency in that technical skills, it is okay. But if it is related to some psychometric analysis and psychometric testing, without having this the certification, if you do it, it is not correct.
Valid.
It is neither ethical or legally correct.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have done the briefing. We talked about the assessors and the important dimensions of the assessor, what they should do, what they should not do, all that. Then we have gone on discussing what kind of observations one has to make. And in observations, you make a lot of papers are filled. Now, what happens after that? Typically in any meeting, when you are a coordinator or when you are a convener of a meeting, the most challenging task is drafting the minutes of the meeting. Because the meeting goes on for 3 to 4 hours or 2 hours, and then you have to reduce all that happens in that to maybe some 2 pages or 2.5 pages. That's a big challenge. This is something like that. You have got some set of people. If you've got 15 people or a 16 people batch, and if you allocate 2 participants for each assessor, then you are talking about 8 assessors, and 8 assessors making different kinds of observations under multiple using multiple tools, and on 3 competencies each. So look at the complexity of data, and when you keep on writing these observations, it can lead you to a very, very highly complex situation. Now, at some point, I'm not saying after, it can happen even in the middle, you will have to put them all together, and all 8 of them have to sit together and arrive at certain uniformity in terms of, or agreement in terms of what competencies somebody has displayed and what competencies somebody has not displayed, and which activity has given you the validation for to claim that a certain competency has been demonstrated by the participant. So this is a fairly complex thing, and therefore you must have some mental map or a mental frame in terms of how you want to classify these observations for an eventual discussion with the other assessors, so that you all can come up with a good quality report. So you need to, if you are already used to this, you might do it simultaneously when you are doing the observations. You may devise your own mechanism in terms of how you want to classify them, and you put them into the appropriate cells or slots, so that you don't have to go back and forth multiple times, but that has to be clear among all the assessors. So after that, how is it going to help you? when you sit together among the others, other assessors, it's much easier for you to refer to the competency versus the behavior and validate and authenticate that a certain person has demonstrated this behavior, which is at a certain level, either 3 or 4 or 5, or a certain person has not demonstrated any of the qualities of this competency, therefore he is at 0. Those things can be very, very meaningfully discussed in the meeting. Then all of these people, the assessors, they will either they give their individual rating. After that, either how do you reduce this whole thing into one single rating? 7 or 8 members are there. Each one has his own rating. Now, your challenge is how do you bring them all together to one rating? Because when you send the report to the organization, you will not be sending that A has given this, B has given this, C has given this, like that. You will have to give a unified, integrated, reflective of the truth in the final report. So either you can go by the average score of all the people, whoever is participated in that, or after presenting the perspective of each one, you all can agree on a single rating, which can be just at the meeting. It doesn't have any quantitative bearing. You may have an average of, let us say, 3, but you may finally decide to give 2.5 or 3.5 or 4 because the group feels that. Then you don't compare the average and say, oh, am I giving below average or above average? Whatever is the decision taken by the group of assessors, that be the final, right? And what type of language you must use, what kind of vocabulary you must use. If you have to make note of certain frequency in terms of certain words to be that certain words that are used, all these things have to be, you can have a sort of an informal discussion among the assessors and agree on how you want to proceed with the assessment. Then rating, because rating is important. That's what just now I was talking to you. The rating is very, very important because ultimately the whole exercise is you have to reduce whatever the 8 people have done for every parameter, you have to reduce it to a single number. And therefore, there must be some sanctity to it. So you have 8 different sheets, rating sheets given by each one of the assessors. And then you have now sat down on a table, you are discussing, you're exchanging notes, and you want to give a single rating to them. You can give the average of that. You may discuss and go for an independent way of assessing. It need not necessarily be the average as the numbers indicate. It can be better or it can be worse. Okay. But whatever it is, it should be accepted by everyone in the meeting so that there is no dispute on that. When you are writing these things, preferable you write them in past tense and third person narrative rather than targeting an individual in this, and you don't as far as possible use adjectives in this. Refer you can use adverbs, but definitely avoid using adjectives. Do not write what participant did not do. If you are in doubt, rethink about it, relive it probably, but do not write or do not assume that this would have happened and write something that did not happen. That is either judgment or falsifying the report. That is not correct in an assessment or a development center. Now, all the assessors should be aware of what rating is being given, and they all should endorse that. Make sure that the assessors do not bring in any bias in the report, otherwise the report will lose its value. Well, next comes the integration. Integration of the report is that convergence of all the assessors' observations into one tangible report, one description, and that is reflective of the participant for whom the report is being given, and that will benefit the individual in terms of planning for future growth and undertaking certain activities to achieve that. It will help the organization because you are building the capacity within the organization that will keep you ahead of the competition in the times to come. So the integration will allow calibration of all observations and inferences that have been made and provide validity of the entire development center process. Now, there are basically two types of integration. One is exercise integration. That is, you do an exercise and you sit together along with the others, and then you exchange notes and arrive at what is to be written in the report. So here, for every exercise, or the assessors, they sit together and interact so that all of them are, the memories are fresh in mind. You are discussing across the table. Whoever is able to convince the others about what the good and the bad, the good, bad, and ugly of the conversation of the activity that has happened is what determines who will finally be able to project that. So it should allow all the assessors to share their data. You should not put any restrictions. If the university or the organization leadership takes or interferes in this, then it is difficult. So you must request the leadership of the organization for whom you are conducting to be completely off from the process till you give your unbiased, scientifically valid report. No one assessor should be allowed to dominate the others. You should not allow anybody to keep dictating terms. The second one is final. What we talked about is the exercise integration is different. Each day after certain activities completed, you sit together and discuss. But then as one can see, it is a time-consuming process. It is not holistic. So we also have a final integration, which happens in the entire, after the entire DC process is over. Now, it involves discussing with each participant their competencies and behaviors, each of the DC exercises, and final inferences about the competencies for each of the participants. A final rating should be agreed upon by all the assessors who are a part of the exercise. And in some cases, final rating is an average or summation of all the ratings for every exercise on each competency. But in some cases, it is agreed independent of the averages of that. Integration process should be informed to the organization prior to the DC. How do you want to integrate? What process you want to do? How valid it is? Those things have to be discussed with the organization even before you start this entire DC process. Now, each assessor must enter the integration process with an open mind, willing to listen to the other assessors and understand the feedback that has to be given to the participants in totality, rather than driven by his or her own perceptions or his or her own goals. Now, after the integration is over, you have been able to create a very nice report. Then the next question, which is the most important in the purpose for which you conduct the DC, is giving feedback to the participants. Normally, this feedback will not be easily palatable by the participants. So the feedback has to be done, provided in a very, very congenial and motivating environment. It should be based on the specific competencies, how it was displayed, and what inferences you have made, so that the mental model of the participant will accept what you're saying. If he doesn't accept, it doesn't help you at all. The feedback should be given based on data, and the participants should be invited to first share their own experience in the DC process, along with authentic reflection on the exercise that he or she has gone through. The feedback should be offered as a mechanism for development and not as a judgment. And it is important there is a commitment towards an action plan at the end of the feedback with some clear objectives of development for the participants. Otherwise, you will go through the DC process, everything has happened, but no further improvement has taken place because the employee has not got what he has to get to improve himself or herself. I think with that, we have come to the end of this, and this module also, I think, is more or less over. the 5th module. We are now left with only the 6th module as per the handout, and that we will complete on the 26th of May. We have 2 sessions. After 2 sessions are over, we will still keep some time for you to ask any questions related to your overall course or your assessment in this course, all that. Or if you have any questions related to your assignments and all, you can ask. So that is where what it is. So you can now ask me if you have any questions. Any questions? Whatever.
Nothing from my side, sir.
Okay, madam. Mr. Dilip Roy. Dilip ji, any question? Jagannath ji, any question? Mr. Bobby George?
No, sir.
No question. Padmapriya madam?
No, sir, no questions, sir.
Okay, wonderful. So you've been such a nice audience. You don't have any questions. Is awesome. Yeah.
Sir, I think I asked you enough during the session. Now I don't have any.
No, you have contributed. I don't think you have really asked any questions. You see, you're all adult learners. It is andragogy. The best way to learn among adults is to share information to one another. That is more effective than being given by one instructor. So the more the discussion, better it is. One, when you discuss, your mind gets cleared. Speaking makes our mind clear. And when you speak from your own experience, others also learn from your experience. That is the best way of learning for the adults.
Agree, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other thing that you want to ask, contribute? We still have some 6-7 minutes left. Jagannath ji, you are very quiet. Are you there?
I don't think he's there, sir.
It looks like. Otherwise, normally he would bring in some perspective from his own experience. That is what we have seen. All right. So then, if nothing else, we can first I will stop the recording and